Welcome back. This brings us to our final segment of our webinar series. I will be wrapping up with the heart of recovery. And again, thanks for sticking with us. Your attendance is much appreciated. We will begin the final segment here with caring for everyone that's involved. The heart of recovery is bringing the survivors back to a home while also caring for the caregivers in the process. It is why the LTRG is formed in the first place. Aside from the nitty-gritty work involved, we must remember purpose in all we do. In the photo on the right is a couple from Monet, Missouri. This work was done 100% by volunteer labor from churches in Missouri. As we go through what I call the day-to-dayness of working through recovery, we must not forget the core of all work is caring. This is the FEMA sequence of delivery chart. There are a lot of details in this chart. However, I'm not using it to make the point that recovery begins with voluntary agencies and ends with voluntary agencies. As recovery unfolds a new community, it is important to remember these volunteer agencies and be sure to give credit where credit is due. So long-term recovery begins with volunteer agencies and ends with volunteer agencies. There are some guidelines for determining if there's a need for the LTRG to participate in the rebuilding of a home. Nearly always, faith and other volunteer groups will only work on privately owned property whose primary residences are the families they are working with. Vacation homes, outbuildings, commercial structures, or rental properties are not included in the work of the long-term recovery group. However, there are some exceptions. An exception might be property that has two homes on it, and one person is the homeowner, the other is there, an elderly person or someone who's just dependent upon that family. So there might be some exceptions made, but the long-term recovery group will have to take that under consideration on a case-by-case basis. But what is important is that even though they have the guidelines, the recovery organization should not develop guidelines that are so restrictive that special needs cases cannot be considered for rebuilding. It seems that every person or family that requests help feels that their needs should be attended to first. However, there must be a system to who will be helped first. Listed here are some guidelines on what to look at when making a priority list. If the survivor falls into one or more of these categories, they may be someone who needs to be helped first. So from the beginning, it's important that the LTRG have a system for defining priorities. It is also important that those whom the LTRG will help have participated in the case management process. Appeals to emotion, political connection, or other considerations should not be allowed to replace the process of verifying what the needs are, what resources the client has, and the priority within the total community of the given project. The case management process is absolutely essential to a responsible rebuilding program. Some people don't desire assistance, but we always have to ask. Part of the process of empowering people is encouraging them to make their own decisions and then to respect those decisions, even if we might have suggested a different course of action. By the same token, a person or family who do not have the mental, emotional, or other capacity to participate may may need to be referred to another agency or to their extended family for consideration of alternate housing rather than rebuilding of their disaster-affected housing. Agencies and organizations bring their resources to offer at a common table. Large or small, communities rally to respond and help their members recover from disasters. As the process of assessing the assets and needs progresses, the long-term group gathers those organizations, agencies, and faith-based groups that have or can get resources together and make a plan for funding. Managing volunteers is a part of the heart of recovery. It is important to show those who are helping our community that they are appreciated and that the unique skills that they bring to the table are not overlooked. We will be sharing some guidelines on how to best use the people that are gathering to help the community. From the beginning, it is important for your long-term recovery group to establish and maintain a good reputation in the community. Volunteers will have a better overall experience of the organization of the group if the group is managed well. Volunteers are vital to the LTRG process. The reputation of the group reflects how the LTRG is managed. How well the group is organized will be apparent to the community. Listed here are some things to consider for a positive community image. Remember that you are competing with other disasters around the country. Be sure to build trust with members of the LTRG and members of the community. Local, state, and national organizations will help a group that has established a good reputation. Volunteers will be more apt to help a group that has a positive image in the community. Volunteers will skip a group that has a history of mismanagement, fighting, poor judgment, and secretiveness. Developing job descriptions for what is needed in the community will help funnel in the type of volunteers that you will need most. Large tasks are more manageable if broken down into smaller groups with responsibility designated. It is a good idea to build a volunteer list that can be sorted by agency, skills, locations, etc. You want to be sure to match the skills of the person with the task assigned. An electrician will not make much progress for the LTRG if he's raking leaves. Check out the picture. Along with getting the project estimated, planned, resources gathered, permissions obtained, agreements with all participants, especially the kind, volunteers need to be provided with meaningful work. If a group of skilled builders travels several hundred miles, uses up vacation time, their own money for their expenses, and put to work on menial make-work jobs, they're probably not going to return home feeling rewarded and may not do another disaster trip. Volunteers need information, order and direction, and a clear sense of purpose. Establishing policies will help volunteers stay organized and will in turn create a better overall experience for the individual volunteer. Ultimately, it will help the LTRG with better quality control, and participating agencies that are part of the recovery group benefit when there is a common standard for use of volunteers. Training volunteers is an opportune time to create a sense of unity among the group. This is a good time to share the mission statement and other documents that can help educate the volunteers on not only the LTRG, but the community as a whole. The volunteers need to be introduced to the neighborhood they will be working in, the families they will be working with, and the work they will be doing. Share some of the stories of the survivors and allow them to get a feel for who they are helping. Involving volunteers in the story of the disaster makes them partners in the rebuild, not just workers. Be sure to also let them know that they are helping those with the most in need and have the highest priority. Not only does this give them direction it will also give them a sense of satisfaction to know that they are doing the best they can for the community. Training and orientation should include basic safety considerations. Are there hazards or security issues in the neighborhood? Where is the shelter for volunteers to retreat to in the case of a warning of impending danger? Where is the nearest hospital, ER, or urgent care clinic? These are just a few highlights. Organizing accommodations for volunteers is important, and showing good hospitality, especially if they are coming from out of town. There may be a cost involved for feeding and housing volunteers. Be sure to find space that has adequate facilities for the volunteers to feel comfortable. Staying organized with the LTRG will help them find these accommodations and keep expenses low for volunteer groups. Again, there's much to consider, and these are just a few highlights. Routine meetings for volunteers to stay in touch with management is a good way to keep communication fresh. Some things that management may want to be aware of are any problems volunteers may have with accommodations, work materials, or health and safety issues. Building a sense of rapport with volunteers will help smooth out the work environment. We all can get caught up in the day-to-dayness of our lives, and forget our sense of purpose. As time passes while working with your volunteers, remind them that they are serving a greater purpose, helping the community get on track. Share successes around the community. This can help break the monotony of the day-to-day work and recharge their sense of meaning. The most meaningful experience of volunteers are connecting with homeowners. The only way that volunteers know if a homeowner that really needs their labor is through the case management system and the LTRG. Let's talk about some guidelines for construction management. Throughout recovery, it is important to remember our purpose, and that this is to return families to the safe, sanitary, and secure and functional homes. With these 4 principles in mind, we focus on the heart or core of what is most important, and that's caring. Each project will need a detailed estimate of what needs to be done, what skills will be needed, and what materials and labor it will take for that to be accomplished. One resource available to LTRGs is the service of Dale and Jean Piercy. Jean is pictured here, and they both provide detailed training for construction estimation. We borrowed some of the few photos from the Piercys as we talk about estimation and construction. If you want their information, please jot it down from this screen. Let's look at a few examples of construction estimation. The damage to this home is minimal and could be assessed and estimated by a weekend warrior. A weekend volunteer work group could most likely get the job done over the weekend. This is beyond the realm of the weekend warrior and needs a high level of skill to assess and estimate. This is a job for professionals. As extensive as the damage to this house is, it could be made worse by dropping one of those long limbs on the undamaged part of the house, or even worse, on the neighbor's undamaged house. This project will also take a high skill level, as there are many hidden issues that will need to be addressed, including sensitivity. One thing that those of us who do this stuff a lot is that we can get a bit callous. We talk about all that stuff lying on the sidewalk as debris, but this debris is maybe grandma's dresser, the rocker we rocked our babies in, the photo album, the mementos of life, joys shared, sorrows endured, and the necessities that will be needed for people to reach what we consider a new normal. In this house, inaccessible because of damage are those things it takes a great deal of insensitivity to tell someone that that house and everything in it will be crunched up and hauled away. So maybe sometimes the way to approach this is to make a good faith effort to estimate the rebuild and let the client decide slowly and painfully that it has to go. After the estimations are done, construction manager or other designated persons on behalf of the LTRG will put together a flow chart of projects that lay out the various projects in a visible way. This flow chart will show where each project stands in the process. It also shows the time frame and in which each work will be done and when each component of the rebuilding will be accomplished. The project board in this photo is one way to design a flow chart, but it can also be done on an Excel spreadsheet, a project planner program, or a construction estimation program. Of course, each has its advantages, and you can discuss with your LTRG to decide which one works best for you. Job site supervision. The LTRG is responsible for the work that is done in its name, but is financed by donated dollars given to it. The LTRG is also responsible for the survivors, the community, its governing board, and the volunteers. Therefore, it is essential that the LTRG provide site supervision to make sure that things are being done in a professional way that will provide safe, secure, sanitary, and functional housing for people to live in. No matter how experienced a group may be, the LTRG must still provide supervision. Many rebuilding projects will not be able to be put back like it was. New codes may come up into place since the house was originally built. One of the policies that the LTRG will need to put into place will be how much it will be willing to commit to upgrading houses that need to come into compliance with the codes. Similarly, there will be many projects there where more or less wrecks before the damage was wrecked before the damage, and this is called deferred maintenance. So you can just paint over it or patch it up. You can't do that. You have to address the structural issues that may increase the cost and makes the project a little bit more difficult. Remember, the mantra is safe, secure, and sanitary, and functional. And that's the standard that we want to work with. Safety is the key. Don't be careless. We've all done it. Hard work on a rickety ladder like this guy, cleaned out church basements filled with toxic sludge without protective equipment, spliced live wires, used a circle saw while resting a 2x4 on a knee. We've all been a little careless, or let's say stupid, at least once. The ultimate responsibility for staying safe belongs to the volunteer, but a well-prepared LTRG will put into place procedures, oversight, materials, and equipment to make it as safe as possible. A well-organized LTRG that provides adequately safety training can prevent a bad case of the stupids. Do we have any questions, Kule?
No questions at this time.
Thank you.
Don't forget to type in your questions before the end of the presentation. We're going to have a little bit more time at the end to answer your questions if you have any during the presentation. Sandra?
Thank you. Let's talk about mitigation. Another important issue is rebuilding is to consider mitigation. What is mitigation? It is protecting a community against or lessening the impact of the next disaster. Sometimes that means removing the cause of a threat, but we can't stop tornadoes or hurricanes from coming. We can only control how we prepare for them. We can do things that will reduce the effects of the natural disaster or have community shelters in place ready to take the community during a threat of a disaster. Pictured here is a tornado shelter. In the scope of a community mitigation effort, it is a relatively simple structure that has great potential to save lives. Searching for what is best suited for your area, whether it is hurricane shelters or sandbags for tsunamis or flood-prone areas, preparation is the key, and this is the focus of mitigation. Inside households, it may be a good idea to take special precautions from potential threats. Be sure to know all the major threats for your area and build accordingly. A good mitigation practice is to build a safe room. A room with extra reinforcements can add peace of mind in the event of a disaster. Sometimes it's as simple as putting the hot water heater, the furnace, and air conditioner up out of high water's way, or placing hurricane clips on the roof. And that can also bring peace of mind. These are things that can be discussed with your clients, case managers, construction managers, and the LTRG. Mitigation can get more complicated, such as elevating homes in flood, hurricane-prone areas. This significantly raises the complexity of the project, the skills required to build on an elevated platform, and the cost. But if we are to continue to live in places where hurricanes happen, there are things to be considered. The purpose of mitigation is not to satisfy some requirement or regulation. The purpose of mitigation is listed here, if you look at that. Although it takes much more skill and effort to properly plan mitigation efforts for a structure, it is to help the inhabitants return to a safe place. Remembering safe, secure, sanitary, and functional structures. Effective mitigation efforts can reduce damage and the cost of rebuild in the long run. Listed here are some places to get involved and learn more about proper preparedness practice. Mitigation can benefit the community as a whole and to recover more quickly and efficiently after a disaster. There are a number of protective tactics that you can use. You modify the building, acquisitions, relocation, rebuilding, flood proofing. Sometimes mitigation can't be done on a client basis, not on a neighborhood basis, or even sometimes on a community basis. LTRGs will often get involved in advocating with government agencies, business, and industry to do those things necessary to mitigate the effects of disasters. On the island of Kauai, there is an effort starting up to rebuild 2 bridges that have been damaged during severe weather in March. That's a mitigation activity. Okay. Any questions?
Okay, we have one question. It's coming from Michael, and he's asking for the certificates. If we have more than one person at our webinar site, do we all receive a certificate or just the person who's registered? If that is the case, please send me the name and the email address of the people that are part of your group. And my email address will be shown at the end of the presentation today, and you can send an email to me and I will get a certificate out to you before the end of the week. Thanks, Michael. Do you have any more questions? Okay, no questions for right now, Sandra.
Okay, remember this couple? They were pictured in the beginning of this hour. They are from Monet, Missouri. When they moved back into their rebuilt house, it wasn't home. Sure, it was the same size, same floor plan, and the same lot, but it was still empty of the things that make it a home. In their neighborhood, families from around the block came by to help them. They made copies of pictures of the grandkids, shared blankets that had the feel and smell of family, and also brought in pots, pans, and dishes. After much effort and care, it became a home. While not the direct responsibility of the LTRG rebuilding group, it is part of recovery. Maybe the Spiritual Care Committee can help put this kind of work into action. New houses take time to become homes. Welcoming ceremonies can help. Many things can be done to make the family readjust to its new normal. And this says it all. The ache for home lives lives in all of us, the safe place where we can go as we are and not be questioned. To be sure that every person in the community has adequate means of emotional and spiritual care, it's important to consider a holistic approach. The disaster could have caused needs in different parts of the community in unique ways. Listed here are some of the places to look and how people could have been impacted. These needs may not have assets to them. Call on your youth ministers, church volunteers, pastors, and community caregivers to help with survivors' needs. One of the biggest challenges facing survivors might be called cognitive dissonance. Disaster calls into question the belief systems we have relied on. When our belief systems are inadequate to understand what happened and why, it can be a spiritual crisis. A long-term recovery group should not ignore the need for survivors to arrive at not only a new normal in their physical lives, but reintegrate their lives in a way that allows them to understand what has happened in a way that makes sense. A new normal means a new sense of well-being too. Listed here are only a few things that spiritual care providers can focus on to stimulate a renewing sense of hope within individuals in the communities. The community's history can stimulate pride and therefore encourage people to move forward. How has the community grown since the disaster? Sharing stories of heroism and altruism can encourage the qualities of the community. Community cohesion can start off with little effort and continue to grow. How can we bring a sense of unity among all that live here? The LTRG will help survivors to establish trust with the community by providing safety and security, provide opportunities to ventilate and validate feelings. Anniversaries of disasters require special care. Feelings of fear, anger, and pain can be triggered at the mark of these events. This can be true for the survivor as well as the caregiver. It is important to care for both within the recovery process during and after completion. It is a good idea to mark anniversaries after 1 week, 1 month, a year of making progress. Holding events to highlight accomplishments can elevate the sense of renewal in the survivors as well as the workers. Every little accomplishment counts. Holding home dedications or town celebrations or good examples. Caregivers are all the people who volunteer their time to disaster. Sometimes caregivers can be overlooked. Let them know they're not forgotten. And recognition is one way we can pay our volunteers back for all they do to help our communities get back on track. Hold workshops on compassion fatigue or regular retreats. This can help renew caregivers as well. Always be sure to express appreciation. A celebration is a great opportunity for the community to express gratitude for all those that have worked on rebuild. As we welcome families back into their new homes, we must remember all the lessons learned. We must also remember that people that took part in recovery, and be sure that we have a way to stay in touch should there be another emergency where we may need them. There's been a lot of hard work to this point, and now it's time to rest, rejuvenate, enjoy today, and prepare for tomorrow. So thank you. We have come to the end of our presentation. The next few slides will be showing contact information and how to keep in touch. After our contact information, please stay tuned for additional resources and training, and then we may have a time for a few questions. Thanks again for your attendance and participation, and I will turn it back over to Kulei.
Thanks, Sandra. Of course, if you have any questions, make sure that you type them into the right-hand side, right panel of your screen while I introduce all the team members. This is Barry Shade, and he oversees domestic emergency response, and here's his contact information. This is Joanne Hale. She lives in Buffalo, New York, and she oversees much of the East Coast and Florida. Brian Corsour, he lives in either Iowa or Missouri at any given time of the year, and this is his contact information. Sandra Kennedy Owes, and she was your presenter today. Her contact information. And this is my contact information. So if you are sitting in a group today and you did not register for the series, please send me your contact information and the names of the people that were part of your group, and I can send you a certificate of attendance by the end of the week. Here's our map with our regional assignments, and take a look at the area that you're in and what emergency response specialist corresponds to your area. And here's how to find us on Facebook once again. So look us up under the name Church World Service U.S. Disaster Assistance. And if you like us, I can send you updates on when we post our webinar materials and any upcoming webinars for the rest of the year or next year. So here are some additional training resources and training that we've discussed during the presentation. This is a resource for flooded houses that have to go through winter. This is our emergency response program website, and at this website you can access more of these periodic webinars, request on-site training, or ask one of us to consult with your LTRG when you need a boost or some more in-depth information that can be given in webinar format. So contact us. Community Arise. This presentation makes use of material developed and funded by Church World Service and its affiliate denominations. The National Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster has a lot of resources on their website, and it has a way of contacting many of the members who also have recovery resources. And of course, there's a wealth of information from FEMA if you visit their website. Some necessary information. And if you have any more questions, please type them in. We're going to stay on for a little bit more. I have one question coming from Raymond, and he's asking, are the certificates going to be coming through email? And yes, I will be sending them to you through email. The certificates that you receive will be blank. It will have the date, and you will type in your name to show that you have saw the series today. I have your email addresses and your names, so that makes it valid if anything were to come into question. I have a question coming from Aubrey, and she's asking, are there any suggested resources for that are specific to LTR and wildfires? Sandra, you want to take that? Or Barry?
Are there specific...
Kool-Aid, this is Brian.
Mm-hmm.
The Purdue University, University of North Dakota, and KU, Kansas University, all have information on their websites about specific issues related to wildfires. And the U.S. Department of Agriculture has a number of resources that are accessible, both financial resources and other kinds of resources, information resources available that are specific to all kinds of agricultural issues, including wildfire. There is one volunteer group that specializes in rebuilding fences that have been damaged from any source, including wildfires. That's what little I know about resources specific for wildfires.
Thanks, Brian. I'm not getting any more questions for now, so thank you for joining us today. And I will be sending your certificates before the end of the week. And if you have any more questions, you can definitely contact any of us. And I will let you know when the materials are posted via Facebook. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.